We are live for the third episode of Nick Valencia Live. Hey, everybody. How are you? Hope you guys are having a great day. This is Nick Valencia. I'm Nick Valencia. I'm an independent journalist based in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been spending a lot of time, though, in Los Angeles because the biggest story, one of the biggest stories of 2025 has been the Trump administration's take on immigration and what they've been doing to sort of fan the flames. One of the things I want to address here right off the top as we get into this third show, we're soft launching this. We're just getting going here and trying to figure out what this is all about. And I was talking to a friend today, and it came up. What makes you different than anyone else? What makes you different than another independent journalist or from the mainstream or this legacy media that you're coming from? And it got me thinking that one of the shortfalls, I think, one of the shortcomings in journalism today is not following up on stories. We get this sort of drive-by news approach where you see a reporter go in, sort of parachute into a story and then leave, and you never hear about what happened in the follow-up. You never hear about what happened after the fact. This platform allows me the opportunity to go in depth on an issue and for those of us out there to learn, those of us out there that are willing and open to learn something new. I think that that's the mission that I'm on right now. I don't think that I know that that's the mission I'm on right now. I told you guys last week when I had Adrian Carrasquillo on from the Bulwark Online that this upcoming week, just in a matter of a couple days, I'll be heading to the Central Valley, where I'll be looking at the difference between what's going on in the Central Valley and Southern California. The Central Valley, for those of you guys know, a lot of Republican voters, a lot of people that support President Trump. It is still surrounded by undocumented labor. And there are farm workers and farms that knowingly employ undocumented labor. It's sort of like the unspoken thing that's just sort of part of the game. I'm going there to put a spotlight on just how different it is in an area that's Republican versus a democratically controlled city like Los Angeles or a more democratic county like Ventura and Santa Barbara County. What's going on there and what are the farmers talking about? Just to give you a sneak peek, the headline and sort of the big thing that I'm following there is that the farmers, despite President Trump saying that he's willing to lay off the farmers and the hotel workers who are undocumented, they don't believe him. And so they've gone into hiding. And some of them, anyway, are not showing up to work. Their kids instead are showing up to work. I pulled out this theme and this thread a couple of days ago when we saw what happened in Camarillo at that marijuana dispensary, where we saw children among those, well, I should say teenagers among those detained, minors certainly. And it brought the question is if some of these areas are knowingly employing not only undocumented labor, but potentially minors that don't have, that shouldn't be working in these areas, you know? So we're going to explore that. We're going to look into that conversation, and we have another surprise that's part of this element. But for now, I believe that we have Gustavo Arellano that joined on. So we're going to have him. I'm going to invite him right now. If you guys just give me a quick moment as I navigate all of this technology here. Gustavo Arellano. Here we go. Let's invite Gustavo, invite him to co-host, and we'll wait for now. So if you guys want to jump in the chat, if you have any questions for me while we wait, that wasn't very long. There he is.
There it is. I see.
Hey, man. Wow.
You have the Emmy behind you. I just have a wall of white. And kudos to you. Congrats. I love everything that you're doing so far. You talked about
Thanks,
what
man.
makes you different from, all the other voices. And I'll say this, look, without saying the idiots that you used to work for, you were afforded the opportunity to travel the country. Too
Yes.
many, and I've been lucky to do that as well, but too many local voices, they're great, they're incredible, but they only know what's immediately in front of them. But you're based in Atlanta, you're from Los Angeles, you've traveled all around the country, so you have this network, these resources of people that you could talk to. And now you're unshackled by the idea of objectivity. So you could go back to folks and say, hey, that amazing conversation you had with the Trump supporter from South Texas, you had a, agree to disagree type of thing, but
Right.
You're bringing it. I cannot wait to see what else you bring. And so I'm honored to be here. And here I am.
I'm grateful for you, man, because we talk about the margins that we're sort of having to work in. Hey, let's not throw anyone under the bus, right? We do what we can sometimes. And at least my wife thinks that every one of us out there is trying the best they can. Let's say that's true, right? What's it like being a reporter right now, a Latino reporter or a reporter who happens to be Latino, working at a legacy media organization like the LA Times, like somebody, where Ruben Salazar worked. You're working in a historic newsroom. So speak on that, man. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'm a columnist. So as a columnist, I'm afforded way more liberty than my colleagues are who are just reporting in being able to say what I want to say. That said, it is still the Los Angeles Times. So I could play around a lot, but I can't cuss. Although they allow me to say pendejo now, which is really, really cool. Like
That's a
I'm
win.
creating, but no, look, like this is a paper that has historically had an issue with covering Latinos. I mean, we have written about this before. There's people who still do not trust the Times for this story or that story. But look, we are at a place where some of our best reporters, we think of them as reporters, but they just happen to be of Latino heritage. Brittany
Sure.
Mejia, who covers the federal courts, but has also, of course, over the past month and a half, been covering immigration along with Rachel Uranga. Ruben Vives was so instrumental for getting us a Pulitzer back in 2010 for the City of Bell corruption scandal. One of the worst civic corruption cases in Southern California, and that's saying something. And, Dylan Hernandez in sports, who has been calling out the Dodgers for their hypocrisy when it comes to various political things. And so for me, and I'm kind of haven't been here that long, if you think about it. Basically, just 6 years, and I'm approaching 5 years as a columnist. But it's great to be able to be, and also you talk about the legacy: Ruben Salazar, Frank Del Olmo, Frank Sotomayor, artists, illustrators, editors, and so my job is just to follow in the legacy of those people while hopefully trying to create some, my own little speck of dust in among the Mount Rushmores of that I'm surrounded by.
What is the value that you add right now? Is it the context that you bring of being a child of Santana, being a guy that grew up and having this lived experience? What do you think it is that you bring and sort of add to the table?
Who the hell knows? But first and foremost, I am. People think I'm from Santana. No, 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 no. I'm from Big Bad Anacrime, top of the food chain.
Really?
I mean, I- obviously, if you're covering immigration and you're Latino and you speak Spanish and you're the child of immigrants and one of them happens to be undocumented and the other one, the other side comes from refugees from the Mexican Revolution, then yeah, it is very personal. Yeah, I'm going to have insights that someone that doesn't have all those markers cannot even imagine of doing. But I think what I bring, this is what I was trying, this is what I tell my editors especially. I take the 1 million mile view. So
Mm,
I could do street level reporting. Don't get me wrong. Like when you did have the big protest in Santana, I was there. I saw them uh, p- putting what pepper spray bullets on the ground and
yeah.
tear gas and all of that. Run away from all that. I could do all of that. My colleagues, that's their job to do the day to day stuff and also to do the investigative stuff. My job as a columnist, or as I say, columnista, as a columnista, my job is to
Totally.
tie everything together. Why is it that certain things are the way they're at? So recently, in fact, just today, this is Monday, so I was able to get an A1 story about how, a lot of the attention of the raids in Southern California has been in Los Angeles. And especially in the national media, when you say LA, that's a synonym for all of Southern California. And a
Right.
lot of these reporters who are not from here, they don't realize it's actually specific cities. So I focus specifically on the city of Huntington Park, small city just south of Los Angeles, right, like just on the other side of the 5 freeway, a little bit further from
Mm,
East LA, 60,000 people. In the Southern California imagination, when we talk about Reconquista, the idea that Mexicans took over, the idea is Huntington Park, because this is a city that in 20 years went from 65% white to 97% Latino.
wow.
Huge, huge, huge demographic change. And when we're talking about the big viral moments, a lot of the viral moments, sadly, that have happened with these raids, they've happened in Huntington Park. Like that Walmart employee who was accosted by ICE at the very beginning for trying to defend an undocumented worker. He was from Huntington Park. Christy
Mhm.
Nome, when she's going around like filming Ice Barbie, filming a raid, that was in Huntington Park. That poor family that had their door blown off by like 30 some federal agents, that was Huntington Park. So I did my most recent story was what happens when ICE, when the federal government basically declares war on you on the immigration front. That's Huntington Park. So that's what I could do. Like, I have those connections. People from the outside, they could come in, they could say, hey, there's a lot of raids happening in Huntington Park in LA, and then leave, and they'll do good, important stuff. And they're highlighting important stories. But my job is just connect it all.
One of the things that you talked about in an article in one of your columns about Huntington Park is the decisions that are having to be made by the schools. And you paint this really vivid picture of a school graduation happening where there's an ICE raid. They think it's coming for the school. I'm getting goosebumps telling the story. And then it ends up being around the corner. Talk to me about that and just sort of like, I think about kids, man. As a father, I think about the kids and the trauma that we're creating this traumatic generation, these hardworking families that are being targeted. And we've spoken about this. It's not just the criminals that are being targeted. It's the cooks. It's these hardworking families that have been here for 17, 20, 30 years that are being deported back to a land that they don't know. You got to that in your article about Huntington Park, and I'd love for you to tell our viewers what you found out.
No, thank you. It starts with a graduation for Miles Elementary School in Huntington Park, but it was being held at Huntington Park High School. Huntington Park High School, the interiors of the high school, Rydell High in Greece, were filmed at Huntington Park High. So this is like an iconic high school in the American imagination, whether you know it or
Wow.
not. And so I talked about how in the morning, it was the morning of June 9th. So this would be when we talk about the timeline of raids, of like this big push in Los Angeles. It really started, sorry, I'm bad, 876, June 6th. That's when you had the raid at Ambiance, which was a factory in the fashion district where
Right.
David Huerta, the president of SAU California, was arrested. That was Friday, then Saturday, then Sunday. So Monday. We're talking about Monday, school
And this is
graduations.
after what happened in Paramount. You're seeing journalists being, pepper sprayed, tear gas happening. You're seeing the community standing up. These viral moments that a lot of you that I was watching while I was, waking up. Or I remember being in my bedroom and looking at my phone and saying, "Oh my God, the city is going, or parts of the city are going crazy." So you're there in Huntington Park on that Monday after things are getting a little crazy, right?
I was not there because I was in Santana, but I talked to people who were there. So specifically, I talked to the principal of Huntington Park High, Carlos Garibaldi, and he told me the night before the graduations for the elementary school, they had a Zoom meeting, all of his staff saying, okay, this is our protocol for what happens, what we're supposed to do if ICE shows up. So he's going around in the morning, teachers are streaming in, then he gets a radio call like, hey, ICE is showing up. So he runs to his office. From his window, he's just seeing this caravan of ICE vehicles going up Miles Avenue. So we're talking about going up north. And so everyone's ready. Everyone's waiting with bated breath. But it doesn't stop there. Instead, it just goes up to the next street over, which is going to be Slauson, makes a right. And then this is on video. They bust out of their cars. They start running after people. I think that was the first day where you start seeing Home Depot raids, because you'll remember that Stephen Miller, who is the architect of all of this, he
Yeah.
specifically told ICE agents, I don't care. Like, I want you guys to go hit 7-Elevens. I want you guys, which, by the way, who even goes to 7-Eleven anymore? I
I just
used to,
went
not
there.
anymore.
It'd been years since though.
Exactly. I mean, but this actually, I'm gonna save that for a columna. So scratch it from here. No, but this is very much in his fevered imagination. Home Depots have had undocumented people, or rather day laborers. I don't know their documentation, but day laborers there for decades. So that's when you had a raid, I believe, that day in Huntington Park, which has been hit now 4 times. I think that day was also Pacoima, and you've been having all these raids ever since until this temporary restraining order. And so now the city's like at this uneasy, I don't know if you want to call it break, truce, because we don't know what's going to happen. But over the weekend, I was not getting many ICE sightings sent to me, so who knows?
Mm. We're at this weird point where I woke up this morning and I felt so weird, right? It's like, okay, as an independent journalist who's following the story and trying to catch the next wave, or, be at the story that becomes the water cooler story. I don't want to cover the water cooler story. That's already being talked about. I want to bring people to the water cooler with my story. And I'm wondering, and this is a great segue to the next question, is what is next? Is it the farms? Because the last big event and big incident that we saw was at Glass House, right? You have it simultaneously happening Santa Barbara, Ventura County. And I want to ask you about this because pulling out and giving that 30,000-foot view or that mile view, that on paper was a raid with warrants. They had a targeted operation and they were stood up to by the community. And my takeaway from this is that even the raids that are sort of the good raids, the people that, this is what we're supposed to do, this is law and order. It the approach to the Trump administration, the strategy by someone like Stephen Miller to say 3,000 people a day, no matter what, it creates these situations where you have Americans caught up in these wide nets rather than these targeted enforcements. It creates these situations where you have a raid with a warrant and the community doesn't trust that you're there in good faith. What was your interpretation of what you saw? And this, of course, hits at another column that you talked about, what happened in MacArthur Park. This happened just after that. So I'd love your takeaway about that, and then we can get into MacArthur Park.
Well, look, you have the temporary restraining order that a judge ruled on Friday evening that basically she says for now, if this was brought on by the ACLU and a lot of different groups here in Southern California, basically arguing that the raids as we've seen them for the past 5
33
weeks at this
days.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, 33 days, like the last 5 weeks, that they have been indiscriminate, that they're just going and catching anyone that looks brown, that looks like an undocumented person, whatever the hell that means.
If
And
you're just
so
joining us, this is huge. This is the crux of what Gustavo and I are talking about. This is about just casting this sort of racial profiling, not targeted enforcement. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that was a
no,
really
no,
important point of what she made
no,
there.
but that said, the judge said you could still catch people. You could still do raids, but you need a warrant signed up. That would be the quote unquote good raid.
Yeah.
Of course, and Noam, what Stephen Miller called the judge a communist, Chrissy Noam misgendered the judge. They're just such goons, straight up goons, crass goons. And so that said, even if you do a raid and targeting a very specific person, ICE is going to argue that, well, if someone ran from us, that gives us probable cause for them to think that the person who's running from us is undocumented and we're going to give chase. And here's the other thing. You mentioned earlier about the toll that it's taking on the undocumented community. Absolutely. But this is a psychic terror that is going down on Latinos in Southern California and really anywhere. My daddy's an American citizen. He was undocumented, but he was able to get his citizenship long, long ago. But he had a passport card. He always carries a passport card with him because he goes to Tijuana a lot, and it's chipped. And he told me that the last time he came into the United States, they let him in, but they said, hey, you know what? You should fix that because you never know. So now I told them, you have to travel around with your passport because I do not believe that they will just treat you nicely if you don't with that little card. They'll take you. I travel with my passport card now. Look at me. I quote unquote don't look Mexican. I whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, but we can never walk into a room and be white, homie. Let's not.
I'm not, no, look. I say this just because I've been told more often in my life, I'm Persian, I'm Filipino,
I can
I'm
see that.
Colombian, not Mexican. But no, but the point is, like, I don't quote unquote look it, but I don't trust myself if ICE comes to me and they're going to say, like, oh, I have that fear. So many people have that fear. And this is the thing, though. That's the reason why Miller and them wanted these big rates. They want to sow fear. They want to make any Latino, anyone who cares even a little bit about undocumented people, they want us to be quiet. They want us to run. What they want is for us to turn on each other and start ratting people in. Because here's the other thing for your audience. California, Los Angeles, also where I work most of the time, Santana, they are sanctuary municipalities. In other words, law enforcement and the government is not allowed to collaborate with ICE on turning over people. Serious crimes like murders, rapes, those are exempted, and that goes along with it. So the city, or rather the state, the Justice Department has sued Los Angeles over its sanctuary policies. The state has been sued before. What the administration, in my opinion, wants is for us, California and all these municipalities, to scrape away those sanctuary policies in the hope, almost like us giving something up, in that they're assuring us, well, if you get rid of that, then we'll be nicer. But that's not going to happen. What's the saying? You give them an inch, they'll take the ruler and smack you with it. And I'm being nice.
We're running a race with a moving goalpost. They keep moving the goalpost as to what it is, and so it's like that's the pushback I get from some of my progressive friends. And it's like, okay, meet me in the middle, and then they move back the goalpost. Okay, meet me in the middle, and then they move back, the goalpost. One of the things that you talk about is normalizing things like saying what Laura Loomer said, this Republican voice about 65 million meals for the alligators there in the Everglades detention center. It's for drama. It's to create and stoke a reaction. It's for people like me to get really fired up and talk shit and get really riled up. I understand it's a distraction, but it's trying to normalize saying things like that. When your party doesn't come out against you or just lets that statement lie there or just be out in the ethos and the atmosphere, that's not moving in good faith. That's saying to all of us and giving a virtue signal or giving a dog whistle, whatever you want to say, that you're next, Gustavo, that you're next, Nick Valencia. We're going to start with the undocumented or the illegals, and then we're going to keep marching forward until we say it's enough. That is the fear, and that is the terror campaign that you speak of. I want to pick up on the sanctuary city policy and this notion. Do you think, given the reputation now that the Trump administration has shown to be willing to defy judges' orders to say we're the ultimate law of the land, that sanctuary policy or that status rather is going to save them? I mean, I think from my perspective, did they just target Los Angeles County in part because of that sanctuary status?
Oh, it's not even LA County, Los Angeles. That's the thing. People need to realize that this is not just show, although that's a big part, but it's a point. They are trying to make Los Angeles beg for mercy. They're trying to make Los Angeles, again, like they're goading since the very beginning. They have been goading Los Angeles into having a reaction. And one of the very first columns that he did about this is like, that opening weekend where you had Waymo cars being put on fire, people throwing chunks of concrete on CHP. Like, no, 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 no. That's what gave Trump the excuse to bring in the Marines, which hadn't been done in Southern California since the LA riots. That's what gave Pete Hegseth and all these people LA is burning, even though it's really just 2 square miles out of a city of 500 and some square miles. And I'm
That part.
sorry. I mean, and you know this especially, I am not for any sort of violence of that. I think it's beyond counterintuitive. But what you saw, like, it didn't even rise up to the level of the Lakers losing an NBA finals. LA likes to do these things for better, for worse. I'm opposed to it, but that's what LA does. It is part, I mean, I don't understand why people don't get freaked out anytime the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Eagles fans go crazy. Philly and LA, they're kindred spirits in that sense. But all of this to say is that
You
LA
know why,
has
Gustavo? You look at the optics of the Philadelphia Eagles and their fans, and you got a bunch of drunk white people, and then you look at the Dodgers fans, and they're Chicanos, right? They look like that's what it is, man. That's
and
what it
not only
is.
that, in Philly, when
In
I was
part,
there, when I was in Philly last year, everywhere I went, especially in South Philly, nothing but Italian flags. Do you see Stephen Miller yelling insurrection? Of course not. That Mexican flag does it. But look, LA is being trying to make an example, but in Spanish, LA no se raja. LA does not back down, and it has been absolutely extraordinary to see what has been happening here. But here's the thing, who knows where it's going to end? Trump has 3.5 years more left in office. Trump is, and this is the thing, I'll say this about Trump. Trump is easily persuaded by whoever is the lackey next to his ear and whispering sweet nothings in it. And right now it's Stephen Miller, and Stephen Miller is not going to be dissuaded from his scorched earth campaign. Nothing can do that. Someone else can, but someone else has to be able to uh, wedge themselves in between Miller and Trump. Is that going to happen? That remains to be seen.
Stephen Miller has had 4 years to get riled up and to sit and stew and strategize
Since high
and get
school.
revenge, right? We saw these policies. I saw them firsthand when I covered family separation. And for those of you who are watching, this is the difference between people talk about all the time that families get separated still at the border, regardless of the administration. This is the difference of what the Trump administration did in the first term and what Stephen Miller did. They made it a crime, a felony. When you crossed, you automatically got separated from your child. Today, those Customs and Border Protection agents, those Border Patrol officers, they have the discretion. If they believe that I'm the adult with the minor and I'm trafficking them or I'm not related, they separate the child from the adult. The Trump administration made that a policy writ large, that everybody, regardless of whether or not you were suspected to be a trafficker or some non-relative, you were separated. One of these images that I will never get out of my mind is being in El Paso at one of these detention centers and seeing a little girl as young as my son is now. And I looked at her in the eyes, and she was clearly wearing the same clothes that she was wearing that she crossed in. And she was being held by, at that time, it was like the second or third week of family separation. And they had brought in these social workers who were distinguished by a blue polo that they were wearing. And this little girl was in the arms of this woman wearing a blue polo. And I made eye contact with her. And she had that 1,000-mile stare that you see in war. And I can't help but think that that is going to be one of her first memories of America. That's going to be what her definition is of America. I remember asking the deputy, the undersecretary of DHS at the time, do you know what happened with that child? What's the backstory? She was found alone, by herself, in the field, right? People will look at that situation, Gustavo, and they'll say, how can these parents send their children alone? They just send them with these traffickers. That is such terrible parenting. I would never do that. Think about that. You have the privilege to think like that. You have the privilege not to understand what kind of scenario that they're coming from, to be so desperate that they would just send their child with a piece of paper stuffed in and a phone number and some money, hoping that they arrive to a better life. In my experience, the migrants who I have seen physically cross with my own eyes in the open borders or the Rio Grande, they run directly towards those Border Patrol agents because they are so grateful to see an American officer that will help them and save them, because they are here for opportunity. They are here for asylum. And you take that and you magnify that times 1,000, times 1,000,000, times 12 million. And you get at the sense and the heart of what we're talking about right now. And it gets me upset and it gets me emotional. And I want to talk to you about this, man, because this is something I spoke with Adrian Carrasquillo about in our last interview. How do you, from the mental health aspect of a reporter who sees themselves in the people they're covering, how do you deal with it, man? What are the tools that you use when it becomes too much to handle, when the pain becomes your pain?
I mean, you never are near to it. I am now at the point where I'm dreaming about these things, and that's not good. My dad always says, "El trabajo siempre va a estar ahí." Work is always going to be there. So try to do things that take you away from work, which I always do. I've always done it. Like, I like to garden. My tomatoes are going to come in. Wow, I'm going to be really happy about that. I, of course, spend time with my wife, with my friends, and all of that. But look, these are the times that we signed up for, especially those of us who do care about covering our community, especially those of us who care about democracy, especially those of us who care about a free press. These are the times we signed up for. You do have to take care of yourself. It cannot just be on call, or it can't be hardcore 24/7, because you will burn out. And right now, we cannot afford any good people to be burned out, because again, though, that's what they want. They want you to fear them. They want you to stop writing about them. They want you to normalize essentially what they have done and what they seek to do, and you just cannot do that. And I will not do that. I will not do that. Look, it has been hard. It has been hard just to see the glee that people have in the racist stuff. You talked earlier about Laura Loomer saying, like, oh, she's trying to rise people up. No, no, no. That's the point. The point is to terrorize you. She said, oh, I was just talking about illegal aliens. No, there weren't. Even the craziest estimates by the far, far right of how many undocumented people have been in this country never go higher than 20 million. 65 million was done on purpose. And so they could joke about it and try to call you, oh, you're just don't know how to take a joke. Give me a goddamn break. So you have to keep yourself in focus. Most important thing I say, surround yourself with love. One way or another, you have to surround yourself with love to be able to keep you in check, to pull you back in. And this is the other thing I'll say. This is just for everyone. You don't have to just be a reporter. The two things that people at their worst moments in humanity still maintain as far as they can is hope and humor. So you have to laugh at these people, and you have to have hope that things will get better. The moment can no longer laugh about how the world is, and even if it's gallows humor, the moment you can't laugh at how the world is, and the moment you've lost all hope, you might as well give up at that point.
I have a friend, Natalie Hernandez, who is just so tapped in. She's so spiritual, and she says that people need to hear you laugh right now, Nick. You know, don't let the darkness don't feed that dark part in us, because these are dark times, man. These are really dark times, and we touched on it a little bit. Do you see things getting worse before they get better? I know we mentioned this is kind of a lull. We haven't seen a lot of indications, that the people that are following ice, the ice spotters, the ice chasers, so to speak, things weren't as active this weekend, with the exception of, leading into the weekend and the pop
And
farms.
Oxnard, yeah.
Yeah, in Oxnard. What do you think is next, man? I mean, given that the context and your prevailing wisdom approach, like what happens next?
Look, they're in the courts right now. So you have a temporary stay. And I don't know if it's just LA County or or just the whole Central Core Southern District, which is most of Southern California. That I have not been able to see. But look, this is coming to you. And I'll never forget what Councilmember Unices Hernandez, who represents MacArthur Park, the area of MacArthur Park. So I'll never forget what she said the day of that press conference after the debacle that
The
was
photo op, the
yeah
raid fit for reality TV. That was my headline on it.
the battle of the photo op, the non-battle of MacArthur Park. She said, "We are the canary in the coal mine, and what's happening here is going to come to you." So all you Democratic cities, especially the big ones that are sanctuary places, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Antonio, Atlanta for that matter, the raids are already happening. I mean, Ron DeSantis called up the National Guard. Pete Hegseth sent 200 Marines to Florida. So this is going to happen everywhere because remember, what Miller wants is the eradication of all 12 million estimated undocumented people in this country. That's why the big bullshit bill got allocated $170 billion over the next decade to ICE to level up their workforce, to expand the incarceration centers and all of that. They really want to level up. And they have every right to, as to a certain point, if you have warrants and all of that. They say they only wanted the violent criminals. No, 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 no. But again, the wild card of this is Trump. Mike Madrid, a very, very great writer, also here on Substack and all of that. He said, like, the only person, like, the most wild thing that can happen is Trump all of a sudden offering some sort of amnesty. And he said he could see that with Trump, because Mike Madrid has been covering Republicans for a quarter century, anti-Trumper from the very beginning. But what's that saying, that it took Nixon to go to China? Could it be Trump to bring an amnesty out, to us? I doubt it, but one never knows. So all people could do right now is fight the good fight. Fight it in whatever way you can. Fight it so that it's productive, not something that's going to goad this administration into bringing in even bigger hammer here. What did he say? Fight, fight, fight. Why can't we say that? Fight, fight, fight.
Man, the surge in ICE staffing really concerns me as a journalist, as an American citizen, because what is the quality of agent that you're going to get when you hire so quickly? Who are these people? Where are they coming from? What is their background? What is their training? I know that the maximum age you can be is 40. You have to pass a physical fitness test. I've looked into it a little bit, but the qualifications, man, you got to wonder who these people are. That's one of the things that has concerned a lot of people. Is it like, did you get your gear off of Amazon? I've been having to couch these agents as suspected federal agents because they show up without warrants, without badges. Another thing that you talked about that I want to touch on is the glee that I'm seeing. I've had a couple clips go viral. I try to stay out of the comment sections and let people argue amongst themselves. But there are comments that get through. And I really take exception with this sort of law and order argument. And the one that I use always pushing back is people standing behind, well, it's the law. Well, you know how stacked it is against trying to change these laws. And I've talked about in my reporting that there's too much money being made in the immigration crisis for people to really flip it on its head right now. So how can we really change the laws? It's a really, really difficult strategy. But what I really think about is, like, if it's this law and order type thing. 100 years ago, they told us it was okay to own people, and like people were standing up for that. It's like, why are you so okay with seeing a father of 17 years being here ripped away from his family, or a taquero who's just handing himself over. How do you reconcile that? Or how do you reconcile it, more specifically, Gustavo, when it comes from your own community?
I mean, look, last I checked, if I try to beat up a police officer on the steps of the Capitol, that would be against the law. But a lot of these people who are law and order folks had no problem with a mass pardoning of the January 6th rioters. So give me a
Well, it
break.
wasn't their fault. They were stoked into it by the
Yeah.
FBI, right?
It was
That's
a
what
it
they
was a
say.
deep ops operation. Give me a break. People follow the laws that are convenient to them instead of following the laws that people should that are actually moral and actually go on both sides. I don't know. When it comes to hitting me, look, I'm completely como se dice, not objective in this. My dad, as I said earlier, came to this country, as he would say, he still calls himself a mojado. And he
Wow.
came every which way but loose. Yes, it's a wetback, but that was a generation where they called themselves that, where Los Tigres del
Right,
Norte were singing songs and all of that. Tres veces
right.
mojado. And it's interesting because my dad's generation from his siblings, mis tíos y tías, they all hate Trump. They all absolutely despise them. Not a single one of them voted for him. They all voted for Harris. Then you have my cousins, so people in their 40s, from mid 30s now at this point to mid 50s. None of them like Trump, but I could see some people not voting for him, no way, but definitely not voting for Harris because of all sorts of issues. But
Sure.
then you get younger people, like so the children of my cousins, I know more than a few of them that voted for Trump. And so the story that I tell when it comes from your people, I actually wrote this last year where you already had polls. This is polls from last year. Now the polls are all over the map. But at that point, that the level of aminosity that Latinos in California had against undocumented people was basically at the same level that white people in California had for undocumented in 1994, the year of Proposition 187,
Wow.
which is crazy, absolutely crazy. And so, as a columnist, you try to get the facts, you try to interview people, but it's always about the anecdotes. And you know this. So, the anecdote that I told,
Yeah.
I was at the 50th wedding anniversary that mi tío Jesus, my mom's oldest living brother. So we're there in Yorba Linda, very white city. We're waiting in the buffet line for enchiladas. And so I'm talking to a guy. He's a cousin. How is he related to me? I don't know, but he's a cousin. Es el rancho, exactly. And so whenever I go to these family parties, all everyone wants to talk to me about is news because I'm the reporter in the family, which
Yeah,
I
you're
don't
the
mind.
news
I
guy.
don't mind. Yeah, I love everything. But he's just going on and on about Venezuelans. Oh, they're getting free hotels. Oh, they're getting free this. Oh, they're getting free phones. Blah, 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 blah. Like, so he just railing against him. And then I told him, when you came in illegally, because he's a citizen now, but he came here illegally. When you came in here illegally, that's the exact same thing that people are saying about you. And then what he told me, I'll never forget. Oh, no, 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 no. I came here illegally the right way. And so in his idea, illegally the right way is coming in, taking no welfare, taking no money, and just working
Okay.
their ass off. And I think that's how you should do it. But I'm like, that disconnect, though. It's that disconnect that was inflamed by Spanish language WhatsApp, by what your cousin sees on YouTube and Facebook, and not enough people pushing back against that. So I think we agreed to disagree. He probably voted for Trump knowing him, but it's like, dude, you're not going to pull that on me. So this is what I mean by that's what I can do is tell people what you're saying. That's what they said 30 years ago. That's what they said 70 years ago. That's what they said 100 years ago. And what does not change in all of this? That the xenophobes were wrong. That the xenophobes were heartless. And at the end, the xenophobes lost. Victory is not immediate. Victory sometimes takes a generation. But what did MLK Jr. say about the arc of moral justice? It's long and it bends, but it gets somewhere. And I know I totally messed it up, but that's how it is.
God, you gave me goosebumps, man. I have really, really enjoyed listening to you and the conversation and your perspective. Not full of shit, man. Not blowing smoke. Like I really learned perspective, and I have a lot of parallels with you. Like I have an uncle Pete who is always been a Republican, and my dad used to joke with him like, my uncle Tony Pete, Pedro Tony, we call him both things.
Sure.
But he had a paper shredder, and my dad's like, you are a Republican because you got a paper shredder, and I didn't understand what that meant back in the
That's
day.
funny.
Anyway, um, I feel as though hope is really, really important right now, and you gave me some of it. And I talked about this on Instagram before to try to promote this. Gustavo Arellano has been on the national stage for probably 2 decades, maybe more. He was on Comedy Central back in the day when I first saw him. I was living 2 houses down from where I'm at right now, and I was so scared about my new job opportunity to be a national reporter at CNN. And I thought that they were giving me a chance. They were sort of taking a chance on me, right? Like little did I know that I was offering something too. And I don't remember anything. I don't remember any specifics of that conversation, but I remember sitting there and thinking, holy shit, Gustavo believes in me and he's taken me seriously. And he is on the other end of the phone right now and he's listening to me. And the power that you have is making people feel seen. And I think that that is one of the greatest skills that any journalist can have. It's not telling a good story, it's making people feel seen. And I want you, and I want to give you your flowers in front of people here. They always say praise publicly and criticize privately. You made me feel seen when I really needed it, man. When like I didn't know a lot about what I was doing. I saw you on TV, literally saw someone that looked like me on television, and I picked up the phone because some mutual friend gave me your number and I called you and you picked up, man. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for who you are. I feel like, I mean, we didn't talk about a lot, but I'm very mindful of your time. We didn't talk about alligator Alcatraz. I want to kind of get into that. We could save that for another conversation. And to tease, I am supposed to talk to a private security contractor who just left alligator Alcatraz. He talked to me over the weekend saying, Nick, it is a mess. He sent me pictures. We're going to get into that conversation. That's a story coming up. Before I let you go, Gustavo, is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about? Anything that you would like to say? Want anything you like to plug? Now's your chance, man.
I mean, thank you for what you said. I don't know. If people call me, I'll tell them what they need to hear, but I'm always truthful. If you sucked, I would have told you that. So just know that, okay? So I don't say nice things just so people could hear it. But no, I mean, in terms of, I'll say this, in terms of plugs, support the media that you want to support. So the obvious one for me is the LA Times, but also support you, Nick. Also support LA Taco. Also
Oh, yeah.
support the
Hell yeah.
nonprofit news agencies like LA Public Press. I'm just talking here in Southern California, but also just support the people that are doing the good stuff. I can't tell you what nonprofits to support. That's upon you folks, but like I can say support the local media, support the people. And look, and kudos to all the citizen journalists right now who are doing out and documenting the ICE raids. That is more essential than ever. And I said that also in one of my pieces. Everyone's a reporter now, just checking out La Migra. But also, you need the people who, again, who can connect the dots, who are paying attention, who can give you that context of what is going on the micro local level, the local level, the national level, the international level, all of that. I mean, plugs, sure, follow me on Substack, but I don't use really Substack. I only use it for this. I actually have my own personal newsletter, which if you follow me on Substack, I'll just I'll send you there, but you'll get a warning like, hey, if you don't want to subscribe to it, then you could do that. But no, look, a plug. How about a plug to a bunch of cliches? Resilience and joy. Those words are so overused, but there's a point to them. And that's what we need right now. The good people in this world, resilience and joy, we need it now more than ever because they want us to lose both of those attributes. Don't lose them.
My favorite thing that you said this conversation, these last 45 minutes, is like, this is the times that we signed up for. We're built for this. And you were built for this, man. God bless you. Thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. Have a great day, Gustavo.
Take care, man. Cuídate. Keep it up.
I'm going to stay on for just a little bit here while Gustavo drops off so we could just recap a little bit about what we saw and what we talked about. If you were just joining us here, I'm Nick Valencia, independent journalist. You just watched the third episode of Nick Valencia Live. That's really cool. It's still so weird to say my the name of my show and that I have a show and that I have people watching and that stay with me. Another one just joined while we're talking about that. But Gustavo said a lot of stuff. He talked about Huntington Park sort of being the epicenter of the ICE raids. They are on the front lines. They really feel like this is a war zone. And they don't say that. I'm not saying that dramatically. I talked to a guy named El Chavo who's with Unión del Barrio, which is one of those nonprofits that Gustavo was talking about there at the end. And he was telling me that he feels like a foot soldier, that the neighborhoods like Huntington Park, the predominantly Latino neighborhoods that have jumped to 85, 90%, places like Bell, Vernon, where there's not that many people that live, but a lot of Latino foot traffic. These are the neighborhoods and the areas that are being targeted by these raids. He talked about, people being indiscriminately swept up in these raids, being at a Home Depot, American citizens at parks who are cast in this or find themselves cast in this wide net that's being thrown out there. He talked about the sanctuary policy, the sanctuary status of Los Angeles, and perhaps that being a reason why the Trump administration decided to target LA for its enforcement operation in this new administration, this new world that we're in under this second Trump term. He talked about the surge in hirings and the big beautiful bill, or as those on the left call it, the big bullshit bill. The surge in ICE hiring is what we're going to have thousands of newly hired ICE agents on the streets. For me, for someone like me watching this, and I'm sure for a lot of you, who are these people? Where did they come from? What is their training? What is their background? What are their qualifications? If you go on the ICE website, you could see that you can't be older than 40 years old and you've got to pass a physical fitness requirement. But what is the qualifications beyond that? That's a question that I have. And he talked really about being in this situation where people are being targeted for how they look. If you're brown, you're going to go down, man. That's sort of how it's been described to me by people that are out there, people at the Home Depot that may be or may not be undocumented that are being swept up in these raids. The raids for now seemingly have sort of scaled back. We're not getting the imagery that we have been, but we can't forget what happened at the Glass House, that marijuana dispensary in Santa Barbara and Ventura County. Those simultaneous raids, the community standing up. Just a short time ago, before we started this live, I showed images of ICE agents, suspected ICE agents on the tomato farm of an individual, and dozens of community residents literally standing in the fields, standing up to ICE. It was chilling to see that kind of imagery. And this is the times that we're living in, and that's one of the things that Gustavo talked about. We talked about being built for this and being made for this, and that this is an era where accountability journalism matters more than ever. And if you guys like what you see, if you guys like what you hear and what you're reading out there, please subscribe, please share, please like this. It's so different. This is such a different space that I'm in now, going from, working for somebody to working for you. That's how I really feel. I just got back from the NAHJ conference and I can't begin to tell you how many people are excited about what we're doing. It really, really feels like a movement. It feels like we're the first 100 people in Apple right now. I mean, that's a line that my wife said to me, and I'm stealing it because that's kind of how it feels. But I'm grateful for you guys, all 54 of you guys that stayed and watched. We're going to have another episode coming up. And really quick, before I let you go, I'm off to the Central Valley here, Delano, California, where on Wednesday I will be flying to go interview the farm workers there, the farm workers who fear that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, will go after them despite him saying that he's going to leave the farm workers away. This is an area that's different from Southern California and the areas that we've seen really targeted by raids. This is an area that is surrounded by undocumented labor, but this is Trump country. Republican voters. It is also the headquarters for the UFW, United Farm Workers. We have a surprise as well. One of the people that we're going to be interviewing may be a familiar name. We'll save that for later. And thank you guys again. We really appreciate it. Hope you guys are having a great Monday. Mondays are tough for a lot of reasons. We're coming off the weekend. Tomorrow's my wife's birthday, so a very early birthday to her. Happy early 40th birthday, Rach. Love you. Love you guys. Thanks for watching.